I was sitting alone at a corner table in Starbucks, sipping on a hot cup of coffee. I felt really sad because I had recently broken up with my girlfriend. The noise of the coffee machines and people talking around me just made me more aware of the pain in my heart. The smell of the coffee reminded me of the tough time I was going through. We had a big fight, and it made me realize that ending the relationship was the right thing to do, even though it was a hard decision. The tension had been building up for a while, and tonight it reached a point where I knew I needed some time alone to heal. My name's Jake, and I used to love my girlfriend a lot. However, I didn't know that our relationship would eventually break because of her mistake. I still love her, but I understand that I can't go back to that relationship. She's the kind of girl who just wants attention, and she's quite possessive too. I believe breaking up with her was the right decision to make. I was just thinking about this when a girl came up to me, but I was lost in my thoughts and didn't notice her coming until she suddenly slapped me across the face, making everyone around us gasp. It was my ex-girlfriend, looking furious and hurt. The unexpected scene surprised the Starbucks staff, causing them to stop what they were doing. "Why did you break up with me, Jake?" she asked angrily, her voice standing out in the noisy cafe. I touched my cheek, feeling both a physical and emotional pain. "We had our reasons," I said, trying to stay calm. She scoffed at me, not caring about my answer. "You can't just end things like that. We were supposed to be together." I took a deep breath and admitted, "I found out you were cheating on me," a heavy truth hanging in the air. She widened her eyes, pretending to be innocent. "Cheating? Oh, please, you're just making things up." I shook my head, feeling more frustrated. I wish I was, but I can't be in a relationship without trust. Things got worse as she started yelling and accusing me of not giving her enough time and attention. In her view, my commitment to spending time with friends felt like a betrayal. The cafe filled with awkward silence as people looked at us with sympathy, our drama unfolding in a very public way. In the middle of all the commotion, I spotted a familiar face in the crowd, a friend who had seen our relationship fall apart. Before I could process it all, she raised her hand again, ready to hit me once more, but this time, a strong hand intervened. A security guard had shown up, quickly getting between us. "All right, that's enough. You two need to take this outside," he ordered, his tone serious. We reluctantly went outside, leaving the warmth of Starbucks for the cool night air. The distant sounds of traffic replaced the background noise of the cafe, and the bright overhead lights revealed the tension on both our faces. Once outside, she continued to criticize me, saying I was heartless and didn't care. I listened patiently, knowing it was important to explain my side for closure and understanding. "I can't be with someone who breaks my trust," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Cheating is something I can't ignore. We both deserve better than a relationship based on lies." For a moment, her eyes softened, but then the anger came back. "You never let me explain why I did what I did." I sighed, trying to ease the tension. We had chances to talk, but it's too late now. We need to move on. As time passed, I noticed a shift in her attitude, the understanding that our breakup had finally started to hit her. I could see the vulnerability beneath her anger, the pain of losing something she had thought would always be there. The Starbucks sign, brightly lit, framed our emotional conversation. The irony wasn't lost on me. This place meant for casual coffee dates now witnessed the messy end of a relationship. The word Starbucks echoed in my mind, a constant reminder of the unexpected turn my evening had taken. Over time, our conversation's intensity started to lessen. Surrounded by city lights, we stood in the chilly night, accepting the truth of our shattered relationship. The security guard, content that we had moved away from the public scene, left us alone. In a final effort to find closure, I spoke gently. "I hope you find the happiness you're looking for. We both deserve to be with someone who helps us become better versions of ourselves." Feeling weighed down, I turned and walked away, leaving behind the remains of what used to be. The city sounds became the only background noise as I moved away from Starbucks, the spot where our story reached its end. Thinking about the roller coaster of emotions, I realized how life can surprise us with unexpected turns. The breakup's bitterness, mixed with the lasting taste of Starbucks coffee, created a bittersweet memory that would eventually fade away into the past. Years later, I returned to the same Starbucks where our tough breakup happened. Surprisingly, she was there with a new boyfriend. As she came up to me, I felt a bit nervous, but her unexpected words surprised me. She genuinely apologized, saying sorry for the pain she caused during our breakup. She understood the importance of true love without any mind games. Wishing her real happiness with her new partner, I went back to enjoying my coffee. In that moment, I realized how time had helped us grow and heal. Sipping my coffee, I felt hopeful that one day I'd meet someone with a mature and pure heart to be my other half. The echoes of our past were there, but the future seemed to hold the promise of new beginnings.
Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so. I'm feeling tired and sleepy. I need coffee. For me, working without coffee is impossible. I always say coffee is my drug, and my favorite coffee place is Starbucks. Speaking of coffee, I remember witnessing a weird incident that occurred last year at Starbucks. A woman was convicted of drug trafficking. She didn't look like someone capable of committing such a crime, but we should never judge a book by its cover. My name is Laurel Smith. I'm 23 years old, and I work as a journalist in Michigan. While working as a journalist, I was assigned to interview the football team. So I went to the football tournament stadium and gathered as much information as I could get. After that, I began to take interviews, and there was one player who was trying to flirt with me. During the interview, I tried to avoid his cheesy answers. Although his answers were funny, I didn't laugh. After finishing the interview, he came to me and asked me for coffee. He was good looking, so I accepted the offer. His name was Andrew. He was tall and handsome. We decided to meet the next day at Starbucks and also exchange numbers. I had an ulterior motive behind it. I wanted to get an inside scoop on the football game. The next morning, Andrew texted me and asked me about the meeting time. I told him we'll meet during my lunch hour at Starbucks near my office, so I went there at lunchtime, but Andrew wasn't there yet. I waited for him for a while, and when he didn't show up, I decided to go back. While I was leaving the cafe, I saw him standing with a woman. It made me furious for some reason, so I went toward him and said, "This was a sick idea of a prank." Andrew was startled to see me, and he looked like he didn't understand why I was behaving like that. Honestly, I didn't either. I went back to the office without eating lunch. After around 30 minutes, I was called to my team leader's cabin. My team leader said that a football star is asking around for me. I was shocked to hear that. My team leader assessed the situation perfectly and told me to use this opportunity to get close to the player. He told me to get an exclusive interview with Andrew. Andrew was the ace of the football team and a star player. He was like a celebrity. I went back to my cabin and called Andrew to apologize for my behavior. He told me he would only forgive me if I agreed to go on another coffee date. I told him to meet me on the weekend. On the weekend, we met at the same Starbucks. This time, he came before me and had ordered my favorite coffee, which was shocking and creepy, so I asked him, "How did you find out about my favorite coffee?" He pointed towards his phone. I was confused. He looked at me and said, "I stalked your Instagram account." Then he took a pause and laughed. I was still confused. After chatting for a little while, I felt the need to use the restroom. I told Andrew that I was going to the restroom, and I went there. After I returned, I saw a woman sitting in front of Andrew. It was the same woman from that day. Andrew still hadn't explained himself for that day, and now this again? This time, instead of walking away, I decided to confront them. I went ahead and asked Andrew, "What's this about?" He replied, "Before you misunderstand, I want you to calm down and listen first." Without saying anything, I sat there and started to listen. Andrew told me that the woman's name was Betty. She was homeless and a single mother. She needed funds to raise her child, so he decided to donate money to her. Judging by her appearance, it wasn't hard to believe that she was not very well off. After explaining the situation to me, the woman thanked Andrew for giving her a check. Andrew apologized to me and told me not to share this with anyone. I felt bad for doubting him. So I asked him to meet next week, but he told me that he won't be able to meet next week because of a semi-final match. He dropped me home after that. We became friends, and he shared some spicy stories about the football team. I was happy to get the scoop that I wanted, and I began to like Andrew. After his semi-final match, we met at Starbucks. His team had won and was going to the final tournament. I was happy for him. There were several articles about Andrew, and one of the argues was about him dating me. It was written by my colleague Sasha. Everyone was teasing me at my workplace. I was happy on the inside, but acted as if it made me angry. A day before Andrew's final match, we met at the same Starbucks. Andrew told me that he liked me and asked me to watch the football game the next day. When I went to the stadium, I looked for Andrew everywhere, but he was nowhere to be found. The coach told me he was not picking up his phone, so he had sent someone to pick him up from his home. The match was about to begin. The rival team was already there, and the announcer was calling the names of the players. Everyone else was present except for Andrew. Sasha called me and told me to go to the police station. When I reached there, I found out that Andrew had been arrested for driving after taking drugs. This was a big shock for me. I asked him what happened. He said that someone spiked his coffee at Starbucks. I asked him to tell me the details. He told me that he went to Starbucks before going to the stadium, and there he met Betty and gave her another check for donation. Then he took his coffee and returned to his car. I figured out what was going on, so I told the police about Betty. After investigation, the police found out that Betty was indeed a drug trafficker. Andrew got released, and Betty got arrested for drug trafficking and spiking his coffee. Andrew did not get to play in the final match. His innocence was proven, so he was allowed to continue his athletic career. I got a big scoop and got promoted. After that day, I never talked to Andrew, nor did he try to contact me again. I knew what happened, but kept quiet. Andrew was never making donations. Betty was his drug dealer all along. At around 5:15 a.m. on the morning of July 6, 1997, a Starbucks employee arrived at work to open up the Wisconsin Avenue Northwest branch of the world-famous coffee company. Situated just north of Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., there was a lot of work to be done before the morning rush, and the employee in question had yet to imbibe their morning espresso to really kick them into gear. So by their own admission, they were pretty groggy by the time they headed out back to one of the freezer units, intending to fetch some of the breakfast pastries that will go on sale that morning. But when the overtired staff member cracked open the freezer unit, inside was the frozen, lifeless corpse of 25-year-old night manager Mary Catherine Mahoney, along with the bodies of 18-year-olds Emery Allen Evans and Aaron David Goodrich. Although they weren't always on the safe shift pattern, the employees knew his slain coworkers well, and the horror of witnessing their frozen, discolored cadavers was almost too much to bear. They raced out of the Starbucks and flagged down a bus driver who was only just beginning his morning route, and given how they could have called 911 from the on-site telephone, running to find the comfort of another living person is very telling of this person's distraught state of mind. Within 5 minutes of the initial 911 call, police were on the scene and taking stock of the situation. All 3 employees had obviously been herded into the rear freezer units before being shot execution style. But what initially confused the investigation was that not a single cent was missing from the Starbucks. If the motivation wasn't robbery, then it looked a lot like a brutally well-executed targeted killing. But why on earth would someone ambush and murder 3 coffee shop employees during their routine night shift? What made the murders on the more shocking was that Georgetown had been traditionally a low-crime area of Washington, D.C., with local district council member Jack Evans saying to have a triple homicide anywhere in the District of Columbia is an unusual event. But to have a triple homicide in Georgetown is extraordinary, and this has never been a place where crime has been a problem. Over the course of that balmy July morning, scores of blue uniformed officials made their way to the scene to look for evidence outside the split-level brown brick store. Homicide detectives and forensic technicians alike poured over the scene for hours on end after the bodies were found, working inside and outside the building adorned with the familiar green and black logo. They dusted doors for fingerprints, searched the store, and took statements from local residents in the hopes of piecing together what had happened. But it was only when Mary Mahoney, his car was examined, that further evidence was found. Evidence which indicated that the murderers were no random attack. Inside the car was spotless. Safer would look like signs that Mahoney had recently spent time playing with a pet, a dirty tennis ball, a plastic chew toy, a dog's brush, and a red cow. The only possible indication that something had gone awry was a flat tire on the front passenger side of the car, evidence that her attacker had made provisions to prevent her from fleeing. Mary was special. A mother later said she had an enormous heart. She probably would have compassion for the person who killed her. When she moved to Washington several years prior, Mary would jog alone an hour before daybreak, never worrying about being assaulted or attacked. She adored animals, particularly horses, and even took in Mary Lou, her sister Molly's toothless black and white alley cat. She attended various New York colleges before graduating with honors from Towson State University near Baltimore, and was a loyal and active Democrat, and turning for Bill Clinton when he was first elected. And according to her mother, it was a managerial job at Starbucks that really excited Mary. She had been employed by the company for 2 years and enjoyed being the manager. She was often seen sweeping the sidewalk in front of the store and obviously took pride in her store. What she didn't enjoy, though, was disciplining employees, particularly one that Mary had recently dismissed for allegedly stealing several $100s. She struggled with the issue before having to fire him. Her mother said, and for a long time, this became homicide detectives' main theory regarding the Starbucks shooting. Despite their hard work and determination, they came up short at every turn, eventually turning to the television law enforcement institution that is America's Most Wanted. After picking the case up, America's Most Wanted stated a thorough recreation of the murders and detailed many of the theories that the police were toying with. They also advised the number of an anonymous hotline, pleading with those with any information to come forward. And it seems this appeal struck a nerve with one member of the public, who called in with not only a frightening piece of information, but also a rather courageous proposal. In the hours following the broadcast of the Starbucks shootings, a woman called in America's Most Wanted hotline to inform them that she was dating a man who actually knew the shooter firsthand. This mystery person had confessed, even boasted of committing the murders, and on more than one occasion, the couple had initially taken the man's word in pure bluster. But after seeing the Starbucks shooting edition of America's Most Wanted, it became apparent that he might just be telling the truth. The woman then left her name and number so she could be contacted by DC police, and when they did so, she actually agreed to wear a wire for them in the hopes that she could catch a confession on tape. It was then that they learned their suspect's name, Carl D. Cooper. Cooper lived in Prince George's County near Baltimore City, and just on the outskirts of Washington, D.C. itself. He was the son of a church deacon who lived with his wife and son, but at the time, he lived anything but the wholesome life of a family guy. At the time of the Starbucks shooting, Cooper was being charged with attempted murder in the 1996 shooting of an off-duty police officer in Prince George County. As far as family's complicity in his crimes, it turned out that it was Cooper's wife that purchased the 9mm handgun that her husband used to shoot the officer. It was the combination of this and his alleged involvement in the Starbucks shooting that led DC police to wiretap Cooper's home phone. He was arrested after making reference to several local shootings, but insisted that a friend of his named Keith Covington had joined him in the Starbucks robbery, and was him that executed the 3 victims. However, when they caught up with Covington, they discovered he had been recovering from a gunshot wound at the time of the murder, meaning it was highly unlikely that he was ever present on the scene, let alone the ones who have done the shooting. "If I killed them, I'd say I killed them," he reportedly said, "but that's not me. I'm not saying I'm a saint, but I'm not going to go out and just kill people. You gotta be a dummy or a psycho to do something like that. Is pure evil." When confronted with the evidence of his lies, Cooper admitted to lying about his so-called friend's involvement because he killed 3 people and was afraid to go to jail. In the process of trying to avoid the death penalty, Cooper told the investigators he was sticking out the Starbucks for about a month, confirming that he acted alone and fired 2 guns, the .38 caliber snub-nose revolver and a .38 caliber pistol. Cooperating heavily due to the ever-looming threat of the death penalty, Cooper confessed to shooting the manager Mary Mahoney when she refused to give him the keys to the safe, which held over $10,000 in cash. When she said no, Cooper shot a warning shot into the ceiling, which sent a terrified Mahoney running into the employee hall. Cooper pursued, caught her, and wrestled with Mahoney over her keys. But when her resistance looked like it would be too much to overcome, they shot her dead. He then shot the 2 other Starbucks workers at the store, executing one as they survived the attack and attempting to crawl to safety. Cooper later stated that he wanted to put him out of his pain and misery, but it's more than likely this thinly veiled attempt at showing her to conscience was nothing but an attempt to dodge the first death penalty charge in over 30 years. During his trial, even when the relatives of the victim wept openly in court, Cooper remained chillingly composed. He also admitted to murdering 39-year-old security guard named Sandy Griffin during a botched robbery. Cooper had helped Griffin at gunpoint during demanding that the security guard hand over their expensive .40 caliber handgun. But then, fearing Griffin would assault him in the process to defend himself, the serial murderer executed the security guard before quickly fleeing the scene. Cooper admitted to then selling the pistol on the street for $300. Once Cooper was convicted of the Starbucks murders and sentenced to life in prison, Griffin's relatives were no doubt pleased that their loved one's killer had been put away. But they expressed frustrations that it had taken 3 more murders, maybe even more, before the killer had been caught. To them, a lack of urgency in the DC police force had cost 3 young people their lives and raised many questions regarding their competence and command. If the account of his defense attorney is to be believed, Cooper is nothing more than a career criminal whose shaky temperament and unbridled greed caused him to take the lives of the innocent. But time and time again, Cooper had the opportunity to simply take the money and walk away. If he chose not to, he chose to kill people he just didn't need to kill, and he did this on more than one occasion. The first time might have been down to a simple rush of blood to the head, and to genuine possibility that killing the security guard was not part of Cooper's plans. But there's also a possibility that killing him proved to be something of a thrill. The thrill that Cooper wanted to replicate, and executing the 3 Starbucks workers. There's no doubt that locking up killers like Carl Cooper for the rest of their lives makes the world a safer place. The only worry is that there are many more out there just like him. People who've escaped justice for horrific crimes are those who have the same darkness in them, just waiting to boil over.